in the last section, we were able to take our form state object, call the save method on it. When we did so, save method found all of our nested text form fields and called the onSaved function that was tied to each one. So now that we have successfully implemented all this stuff, and we are successfully printing out the actual values associated with each field, we need to make sure that we get both these values into some common location inside of this widget. In other words, it's great that we have access to the value inside of onSaved, but chances are that if we get to like right here, we want to take both, like both is the important part there, email and password, and post them to some API or do something like that. So essentially, I want to get my email and password on like this line of code right here. So to do so, we're going to add some instance variables to our login screen widget. So up here at the top, underneath my form key, I'm going to add on an instance variable of type string that I'll call email, and I'll default that to be an empty string. And I'll do the same thing for another instance variable called password. So now, anytime that my onSaved method gets called on either field, I'm going to take the value that's passed in here, and I'm going to assign that value to the appropriate instance variable. So for the email field, I'm going to assign to the email instance variable I just created that value. So value is the value coming out of the text field itself. I'm going to assign it to my instance variable of email. And I'll do the same thing for my password field as well. So inside of onSave down here, I'll say password is value. So now, down inside of submit button, here's my onPressed callback. We do the validation, we call save right here. When we call this line of code, that goes up and executes those onSaved callbacks and updates the value of our instance variables. So now on the very next line of code right here, I can assume that the instance variables email and password have been updated successfully. So right here, I could print something like time to post, and I'll do some string interpolation here of email and password to my API. Or essentially consume the email and password in whatever fashion your application needs. So last thing to test, I will refresh my simulator again. Doing the restart. Come on, there we go. All right, so I'll enter in a valid email. I'll enter in my password of at least 4 characters, and I'll click submit, and I see time to post that email and that password to my API. So that's pretty much it. So now right here, whatever you want to do with those form inputs, you have, by this time right here, you have successfully validated the form and said, yep, everything looks great, we're ready to go. And so all you have to do from here on out, after validating, is call save to retrieve those values and then consume the values as you wish. So that's pretty much it. That is our login screen using stateful widgets. Now, before we move on, quick reminder, we're not quite done yet with all this login stuff. We still want to take care of learning how to do all this form stuff that we just went over by using that block pattern as well. But before we do that refactor, there's one other really quick item that I want to mention. So let's take a brief pause right here. We're going to come back to the next section and we're going to do one little refactor to our login screen state method right here. That's going to be a really useful refactor. So quick break and I'll see you in just a minute.